It's interesting. I mean, the Beatles, in a lot of ways, their entire career kind of traces the arc of the 60s, beginning with all this kind of youthful optimism, reaching this high point of possible change, and then ending in bitterness and, divorce. When Lennon decided he wanted to leave the Beatles, he said, "I want a divorce." Really, it described, I think, emotionally, what he was really looking for.
He's freed from everything. He's freed from EMI, he's freed from George Martin. I mean, he wants a new sound, a new approach, and in the most radical way possible, but he still wants to connect. He was well aware of the difficulty in following the Beatles, so he had to be at the top of his game, he felt, I'm sure. And thankfully he was.
Paul was suing the Beatles. He was the bad boy. He was the guy who'd broken the Beatles up. It does seem to be a kind of willful dismantling of his entire reputation. But maybe that was something he needed to do.
The only way to deal with that is to just be yourself and let the cards fall where they're going to fall. That's what Wings was. We just happened to be there for that great period of time. It was a great period of time and a bad period of time all in one.
Having dominated the charts since they emerged in 1962, the Beatles' 8th studio album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, would be one of the most influential and important releases in the history of popular music. Having decided to retire from touring in 1966, the band had fully embraced the studio to create a work of daring sonic complexity, melodic invention, and conceptual innovation. It was an album that defined an era. Yet the core of the band, the unparalleled songwriting duo of John Lennon and Paul McCartney, were beginning to drift apart. Where their early compositions had been fully collaborative, as the 60s wore on, they began to have less involvement in each other's material. And by 1966, the more introverted Lennon, awakened to a new consciousness through his experiences with LSD, had begun to contribute less to the band's output, and after the recording of Sgt. Pepper's, seemed to be losing interest in the Beatles entirely. Following the release of their magnum opus, the band's fortunes changed. Manager Brian Epstein, so crucial behind the scenes, died in August 1967. McCartney had continued to try to pull the band together during the production of the television film Magical Mystery Tour, yet it was widely criticized on its release. The EP issued at the same time was far more favorably reviewed, yet the band were no longer focused on the same objectives. And both songwriters had new flames in their lives who would come to influence and enrich them. Yet where McCartney's partner, Linda Eastman, initially played no active role in his professional life, Lennon had found in conceptual artist Yoko Ono a new creative collaborator, and by the recording of the Beatles' next studio album, she was not only present at the sessions, but her influence was evident on the record itself.
I think the Beatles days probably were numbered when he started working with Yoko Ono.